Dear friends, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to do an English interview with a very well-known Israeli Russian writer. His name is Mr. Israel Shamir. Israel, originally a Jew, has converted into Orthodox Christianity, if I'm not wrong. And he is a well-known Christian supporter of Palestine. And he has written in the past many wonderful articles about the importance that Russia has in the New World Order and resistance against Israeli apartheid, against Palestinian Muslims and Christians. On April the 6th, Mr. Shamir wrote a wonderful article for the UNZ review. The title of the article was Fighting the Worldwide War on Death. A summary of his article was that he was, in a way, explaining how a panic has been spread throughout our planet in the name of coronavirus, how countries are on lockdown, and fear of death is causing much more panic than really what corona is. There is a madness which is fueled by fear. And Israel compares the example of Sweden, where we don't have a lockdown, versus the Western states, where they have gone into a panic mode. Me, myself, I'm speaking from Albania, where since 9th of March, we are in a total lockdown. Here in Albania, even though we don't have many cases of coronavirus, as of today, I think we have around 400. But the country has gone into a total lockdown. Our Prime Minister, Edi Rama, who is a friend of George Soros, of Benjamin Netanyahu, of Tony Blair and all other international criminals, has sent tanks and military vehicles in the streets of Albania, and soldiers with a machine gun, they are pushing Albanians to go into lockdown and scaring them. Now to understand a different perspective of how we can fight coronavirus, but at the same time preserve life, love, and reject death, I want to welcome Mr. Shamir. Thank you, Mr. Shamir, for joining us.
Thank you for calling me.
Can you tell us what is going on in the West, and if you can give us a comparison between what is going on in Sweden and in the rest of our planet?
Well, you know, that's quite Sweden is quite unique in the West. It seems that only nearby Republic of Belarus is going similar mode. Well, Sweden is considered to be more advanced and certainly more Western state, but still Sweden decided not to go into any lockdown. I am over 70, so I received today a letter from Swedish Ministry of Health, and they advised me to walk at the fresh air a lot. But besides that, they also suggest to wash hands, to keep distances, not to go into crowded spaces, and such kind of, usual advices that they would give to anybody who is going in the place that is stricken by influenza. So basically, Sweden treats it as some sort of influenza. And it's probably the best that could be done, as I see it. Russia, for a long time, tried to joke about this mania in the West. But then, all of a sudden, they made a full turnaround. And now in Moscow, they began to issue pass, passes, like twice in German. So whoever is outside of home should have a pass, allowing him to proceed. And it's even worse in Israel, where they have terrible lockdown, everything closed, people can't venture out, and there are very, very few deaths. There are so few deaths that, I mean, it's not much to speak about, but they succeed to install fear in people. People are feared, and they are, what is important, feared of each other. So in the old days, you know, when two people meet, they could feel enmity, they could feel friendship, they could feel love, you know, if it's a boy and a girl. But nowadays, it's only fear. And that is obviously great achievement of the enemy of mankind. And now, as we're going through the period of Easter that is coming, that is also a big problem in many countries because they forbade the mass in the Catholic churches. In Russian churches, they divided. Some of them go and do have mass, and some of them don't have mass. Depends very much on the local authorities. And
Israel,
yes,
Israel, here in Albania, we are in a total lockdown. Our government, our prime minister, who is a good friend of Benjamin Netanyahu and George Soros and what have you, and who very often is, in a way, we see him with these global elites, has put our country in a total lockdown. The situation is very scary. People are going bankrupt. Many people are starving. They have no food to eat. But what our government is doing is it is using a police and military violence against the democratic rights of our people. So we're seeing a suspension of democracy here. Under the name of the coronavirus, we're having the installment of a military dictatorship. And most worrying is that religious institutions, mosques, churches, have all been closed down. And we see in a global scale, starting from the holy city of Mecca to Masjid Aqsa in Palestine, to the churches of Jerusalem, they are all closed down. And for us, people of religion, this is a sign of a big curse coming, because never happened in our planet where people were prohibited from praying and asking for help from God. What are your thoughts on this?
yes, absolutely. I agree with you. That is a terrible thing that happened, and there is no any reason for it to happen. And I must say that many priests objected to it, but they were eventually forced to accept it. In Israel, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is closed, Masjid al-Aqsa is closed, but synagogues are also closed. And not only closed, the Israeli government did send the teams with the welding equipment to weld up the gates of the doors of the synagogue. And whenever Jews gather for prayer, and you know, Jews are very stubborn about praying, they arrest them and send them to jail. So the situation is really unbelievable, as the war on death is also the war on God.
Yes, this is what you mentioned in your article. You said that the war on death is a war on God. Uh, why is this? You think that these people who today rule our planet, they have forgotten God and they fear death so much?
Well, yes, I think so. That as the very kind of best explanation, that is what we could say for us, for believers, for people who believe in God. There is nothing all that terrible about death. We live as long as God gives us, and when not, then we die. We are being buried, bewailed for a while, and our souls go to the Creator. And so that sounds to me not too bad, quite normal thing. But for a person who does not believe in God, there is no life after death. For him, everything ends with his death. And that is why he is going, such a person goes into some total mode in being against uh, death in such total way that we never experienced. For instance, in Israel, they have now regulation that even very old men, like 90-year-old, are forced to get artificial ventilation of their lungs. They're getting connected to the artificial lungs ventilation system. You know, it's almost impossible to survive. They say, I have read that only 15% of old people who are getting connected to this system survive. But still they insist that everybody should go through. Even if person refuses, they still force him to go to, because there is no life but life. And the death is something most terrible that could possibly happen. Well, that is probably a problem, but also depends what life, what death. You know that those people they approve of abortions. They love abortions. They don't allow you to stop abortions. But for somehow, but the old people life should be preserved forever. Though it seems, meanwhile, that this virus is quite a Darwinian sort of thing, like it doesn't kill young people, and that's very good. It doesn't kill children, that's very good. And it kills usually those people who are on their way to die anyway. That is being elderly or very sick people, people whose very survival until now was based on successes of medicine. That is more or less as I see it.
In our Islamic theology, we have prophecies of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that before the Yawm al-Qiyamah, or the Day of Judgment, Mecca will be closed and Hajj will be prohibited. Some imams, like Imam Imran Hussein, they perceive what is going on today with the mass closure of mosques and churches in our planet as a sign of the last day. Many Muslim scholars, they see what is going on, they are horrified. They are horrified, number one, by the power of these secular regimes on which we live on, who have decided to replace God and to intervene between humans and God. Because after all, it is God who has given us life, and it is God who gives us death. But what we are seeing from these Western states in the last weeks is that they have decided to take over the role of the God. They go to the citizens, like you mentioned, the case of Israel, where they put into forced ventilation people who are 90 years old, and they are in a way trying to replace God. They are trying to replace the rule that God put for us in this planet. Because as you mentioned before, our life has been given by God, and it is God who will take our life. And number two, yes,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. In Israel, there is one more terrible thing, that they take away old people from their homes, from their families, and carry them away into detention, which they call isolation. But actually, it's not like they ask those people, would you like to come with us? Not at all. They send the army, and the same army that was before that beating Palestinians, now it comes for observant Jews. Actually, it's very interesting that the new Israeli government that is acting now is so full of hate towards the religious Orthodox Jews, like it was towards Christians and Muslims. That is obviously a big change, something that one would not expect to happen. I mean, for me myself, it is let's say a surprise because I thought for years that basically the religious Jews do support Zionists and they don't feel that much difference from Zionists. But now I see that I was mistaken. One should always admit one's mistakes when one notices them, and that's one of the mistakes that I see. That even Orthodox Jews are hated by the Zionist state so much. They claim that they want to save them, but I mean, what sort of salvation is that when they take an 80-year-old man and carry him away by force from his own family and take him away to some faraway place where he is alone and can't see his family and can't even die while seeing his own children and grandchildren. That is really a terrible thing that happens. And such problems obviously are everywhere, though I think probably nowhere they are as strong as in the Holy Land, where they succeeded to stop Easter from being celebrated, and they intend to stop Ramadan from being celebrated. That is one of those really terrible things that happen.
Israel, my final question to you is that we had some world leaders like Putin in Russia or Trump in United States who wanted to resist to this pandemic of fear that is being spread by certain individuals in the world. But as you mentioned in your article, they put so much pressure on Putin and on Trump, and they finally had to accept the panic pandemia. Why do you think this is happening?
Yes, that's true. That's one of those really strange things. I spoke also to Chinese friends. How do they explain why China was first that went into this lockdown? And they say also there was a terrible pressure on Chairman Xi, on their president, and he was also pushed that he should do something, otherwise they will dismiss him. And there was also some fake statistics of mass deaths that was coming. Now we see there was no mass deaths in China either. In China, for all these months of mayhem, they had only 3,000 deaths, and 3,000 deaths for 1.5 billion people is not nothing. It's much less than nothing. It's an amount which, you can't even calculate, so little it is. But still, China was forced to go into this mode, and after China, everybody else also did. I don't know. I can't really possibly answer this question in full. Probably it will take us some more time until we understand what actually these people mean. Let's come back to the times when we met first time, to 2001, to the 9/11. Then it also took some time until we understood what they want to say by the story, by this fake story of 9/11. They said that they want to begin a war with the Muslim world, but it wasn't clear same day. It took some time until we understood it. And now we don't know for sure what they want. Do they want just to eliminate all American debts? America has trillions of dollars of debts. Do they want to eliminate those debts Do they want to instill some total system of control? Do they want to show that all of us will live and die according to what they decide? Well, we shall see what actually it would mean, but I think it means nothing especially good for us, for humans. And that is really quite awful thing that happens when instead of some normal treatment of a normal disease, instead of it, all mankind is going through such terrible, terrible things. Just, I think sometimes about India. Well, you've been to India, India is basically not a place where they would notice 30 people being dead. They would not notice 3,000 people being dead. And I think they would not notice all that much 300,000 people being dead. But there, they have so many terrible diseases. The smallest of them is probably this coronavirus. But they decided to lock down India. Uh, that shows that we deal with some mass psychosis, with some mass mental disease. And why they do it, why do we submit to it, that is something that our children will probably give much thought, and I wonder whether they will be able to find a simple answer. I'll tell you, Olsi, think about World War One, which began more than 100 years ago. In those days, all the countries were in excellent shape. Turkey, Albania, Russia, Germany, England, France, everybody was in a wonderful shape. Now it's impossible to understand why they went to this war, World War One, because at the end of the war, all the world was ruined. Nothing survived, but the United States became much stronger. So it's probably will take us time to understand it, but meanwhile we can treat it as some sort of universal madness.
Israel, thank you very much for your advice. Before the end, I just want to mention to our viewers that for the first time we met in 2001, if I'm not wrong, in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where you gave a wonderful speech in Kuala Lumpur. And your articles have been very enlightening for me. And since 2001, you have been denouncing Zionism, the oppression of Palestinians, the New World Order, the hegemony of the bankers who want to establish a new world order. And actually, your predictions were true, and we saw it that 9/11 was used by the international banking, American banking elites to change the world order and to occupy and destroy Arab countries. The 9/11 story was a fake story. It was a story of spreading panic and fear and Islamophobia against Muslims. And under the excuse of revenge for the Twin Towers, what Americans did is that they destroyed and invaded dozens of countries, or many countries in the Middle East. In this very moment that we're speaking, the Americans are and Israelis are pushing very hard to go to war against Iran. Now that coronavirus is devastating the Iranian society, the Americans keep Iran under embargo. And we're having pressures and threats against Turkey. We have Syria in fire. So yes, I mean, something is going on with the pandemic of fear that they are spreading in the name of coronavirus. We're seeing mass devastations and the installment of a new world order, probably. Thank you very much for being on my show, and I hope to have you again in the future.
Thank you very much, Olsi. Thank you very much, dear listeners.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.